Brian Nichols, welcome back.
What's up, my man? How you doing?
Hey, dude, I'm doing well, hanging in there for sure, man. Thank you so much for coming back because I got some stuff to talk to you about, man. The state of the libertarian movement is in a very weird place. Can I say it that? It's a very odd place to be right now, as if it's not odd usually. But this is like taking into consideration the normal state of affairs. It's pretty weird
Yeah,
with
we're
the whole.
winning.
Yeah. And this it's been weird, man. So for those like who may not just pull up this video randomly in a period of time, like Ross Ulbricht was just free, just
Yep.
full unconditional pardon by Donald Trump. So kudos Donald Trump. A shout
And
out
now
to
Trump's talking about getting rid of the federal income tax. Sign me up. Like,
yeah.
what?
Yeah, dude. And so there's been some wins finally, and there seems to be a lot of back and forth about Angela McArdle and her involvement in that, right? I know she wasn't the only person involved, but there seem to be a lot of people that are pissed off about winning, and I sort of fall on the side of the people that are like, you know what? This is the only thing the Libertarian Party National has ever done in their entire history.
Yes.
Like literally nothing else. And so, I get the sort of, autist demands to stick to purity, right? We have to be pure. And like, bro, like, me, I'm an anarchist. I'm as pure as they come. But I'm also not an idiot too. I'm pragmatist. Like doing good things in the world, like that's better than holding to your principles and riding with Chase as your candidate and getting nothing but mockery and derision as a result, right? So I want to get your take on that, man. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the great quote from the late great Andrew Breitbart, right? Politics is always downstream from culture, and the culture, it's changed like in the best of ways, Brent. And like you start to see it now manifesting in the world of politics. And something happened, and I don't know what the ultimate like pushing the proverbial Atlas stone over the cliff was, whether that was Elon Musk buying Twitter, whether it was the charges against Trump at the state level. Like, I don't know what it was that triggered this abrupt change in the culture, but it just feels like in 2025, not only has the culture changed to the right, but it did so in like a tsunami type of fashion. Like the stuff that we're able to talk about in 2025 relative to not even just like 2, 3, 4 years ago, 5, 6, 7, go back to 2014, like 10 years ago, the pendulum has shifted so far to the right. And now we're starting to see finally that manifest in political outcomes. Like 2016 was, I think, a kind of like a jump start, a jolt, I don't know, to the system where Trump wins, and it was just kind of like it caught people off guard, like what the fuck was that? And then he went away, right? And Biden comes up as the return to normalcy. And this is after we had 2 consecutive terms of Obama. And Obama, like, there was this very like highbrow kind of mentality of like, well, this is the way the culture is now. It's the DEI mentality that really it permeated all the different areas of life, whether it's your personal, your personal job, your friend circles, and then COVID, right? And maybe I danced around COVID a little too much here. COVID maybe was the ultimate straw that broke the camel's back, because not only did COVID open up people's eyes to, oh shit, like our government does not have control of the narrative, and they do not have control of when things are going bad. But also now I'm starting to see other people raising up their hands saying, this doesn't make sense. Can I ask some questions? And just for saying I want to ask a question, you get censored. You get called a bad person. And I think, man, I don't know what it was, but we are at the point now where people are like, you know what? I'm fucking done with this. I am ready to have legitimate conversations about the shit that actually matters. And you fast forward to where we are today. Like I've had, call it a victory march. I don't know what you want to call it, but like there has been for the past 6.5, 7 years, 7 years I've been doing my show. And I started out as in 2018, the guy who would have libertarians on the show talk about how great it was to be libertarians. And we within the first 3 or 4 episodes, that changed to, I was like, okay, well, let's talk strategy. And I had Dean Clancy on the show, and we were talking about the idea of, and Dean Clancy, for the folks playing along in the home game, he was a former White House aide to Ronald Reagan back in the 80s and 90s. 80s going into the 90s, and he was like in the Bush White Houses and stuff. But he's always been a small L libertarian who's just played the game. And we talked about this, like political parties are nothing more than a platform to get your ideas into actual public policy. And I've had this battle with libertarians, and up until 2020, it was a fun little back and forth. Like, hey, let's battle our ideas. Like, what's better, minarchism or anarchism? Or, is it something in between, pragmatics versus the radicals? Like, it was always that debate. And then COVID happened. And then all this shit got real, right? It was no longer like this theoretical, like, let's sit and have a debate in in our little weird social libertarian, like, group in a little club. Like, none of that. Like, it was, okay, we're being censored by the government leveraging private companies to censor us from speaking the truth or just asking questions. Or you have folks like Phil Murphy, governor of New Jersey, going on Tucker Carlson when he's asked, hey, do you have the ability per the Constitution to shut down churches? And he says, well, that's above my pay grade there, Tucker. Like, what? All this theoretical bullshit it was real. Like, and at that point, I was like, we got to stop playing politics, folks. We have to start like living in what's actually happening. And you fast forward to where we are today, man, with Trump getting the second shot at the office. I'm not going, and I need to set the stage here, right? I'm not going in saying Trump is going to be some libertarian bastion of hope and like, he's going to help save America. That's not my narrative. But from an outcomes perspective, it's goofball talk to assert that we could, as libertarians, sit in our little, social club libertarianism and have these little debates, and that's making a difference versus actually getting involved, getting engaged, and making an objective choice. Donald Trump, objectively speaking, from an outcomes perspective, was and will continue to be a better outcome than what was the alternative in a Kamala Harris or a Joe Biden presidency. And I've said this a couple times here, and I'm going to say it to you. I would dare say that the worst possible outcomes from a Donald Trump presidency would still be like measurably better than the best possible outcomes from a Biden or Harris presidency. And I don't even think that's debatable at this point when we look to see what Trump's already done, mind you, through executive actions. But dude, like that's the game we have to play. It's like we're sitting on our hands saying like, this game isn't fair. Well, you're just sitting and watching. You're not even playing the game, right? Like, get out there and actually play the game before you start complaining about the rules. So here we are. We're actually making a difference. And I don't know, man. I feel like we're on the right path right now. But I just went on a little rant there. I'm sorry. I'm all jacked up. Like we're having some success, and I don't. It's like libertarians or the dog who caught the car finally, right? They're like, what do we do? We caught the car. We can get Ross Ulbricht free. What else can we get? We get rid of the federal income tax. Okay. Get Kash Patel and the FBI and start like opening the doors to all the closets and finding all the skeletons. Get RFK over in HHS and start like opening up the doors there. Find those skeletons in the closet. Anthony Fauci, he's been preemptively pardoned. Why was he preemptively pardoned? What did he do? To 2014 to 2025, anything he did is preemptively pardoned? All of Joe Biden's family preemptively pardoned? What? And like this right here, if you can't feel the winning, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, dude, I can't argue with that. So there's a ton of successes you can point at for sure. Probably more than we've seen in a long time. But the thing that, man, I hate to be the wet blanket man, but the thing that bothers me about Trump is like there will be these massive wins. Pulling out the Paris Climate Accord, huge. Rolling back all the DEI programs in the federal level, huge. Like I can list. I mean, obviously freeing Ross, like that's been a dream of ours for quite some time. And so I'm not trying to take away from the wins, but he seems to have this thing, man, this fucking thing, where he's got this he just absolutely knocks it out of the park in certain areas, and then is so catastrophically bad in other ones. For example, like we a lot of people like to talk about inflation, like the Biden's inflation. And it's like, we're libertarian dorks. We know about Austrian economics. We know about the theory of money and credit. Like, bro, like Donald Trump tripled the M2 money supply his first term. And if you really want to get serious about it, like he's responsible for the virus, right? Like his NIH, which is an executive department, right? They funded the Wuhan Institute of Virology through Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance.
Yep.
The whole pandemic is his fault.
Yep.
And then the response to it was this sort of state socialism, combination with Pfizer, and it was, everyone likes to talk about or vax mandates, right? Like, well, you can't have a mandate without a vaccine. Right. And this came from Warp Speed. And then the thing that bothers me is looking at this Warp Speed 2.0, man, that this whole project with Larry Ellison, like $500 billion. Like, hold on, we were talking Doge. We were talking about shrinking government. Now it's like $500 billion to the pharma industry for mRNA, quote unquote vaccines, which, I mean, you know what they're doing? They're calling it a vaccine because they can't have liability attached to it, right? So it's stuff like that, dude. And I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to be the wet blanket. But I look at stuff and I'm like, my God, yeah, some great wins, but what's the cost? What's a long-term cost for getting these wins, man? Like, so I want your thoughts on that, man, because I really don't want to be negative. I hate being that guy. But I'm nervous, man. Some of the things that I've seen, executive orders talking about 2 separate states of emergency. Like, if you know the famous Bastiat quote, emergencies are always the pretext for eroding liberty, right? We're talking about a new drug war, literal drug war in Mexico. And so these things scare the shit out of me, man. But I don't want to take away from the wins because they're great and we never would have got them, under Harris for sure. But I also feel like maybe we wouldn't have got the other stuff because Republicans would have at least reflexively pretended to be conservative and would have just fought back because they're on the other team. So tell me what you think, man. Am I just being too big of a dick or what?
No, and I share those concerns, right? But I guess, and you hinted at it, but it's always based on relative to what? And this is the part where I've had so many battles with my buddies in the libertarian movement, because we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. There is the ideal, as you outlined, and then there's reality, right? We are always in pursuit of the ideal, but there is that moment where we have to acknowledge that ideal will meet reality. And if we're not able to bend and to adapt to what the reality is and take the wins where we can get them, then we're just constantly going to be losing. Now, you're right. I think you hit on something that I definitely wanted to highlight here, is that, yes, the GOP during like the Biden administration, they did seemingly find a backbone, right? And that's refreshing. But from an outcome standpoint, again, you still have folks like Biden, folks like Harris, and all the cronies that they surround themselves with that would, in my humble opinion, do immeasurably more negative impacts on our liberty across the board relative to what we're going to see with Trump, because at least we're getting those victories. And this is the part, it's all strategic voting theory, right? Like, you can vote for a candidate and feel good knowing, like, I voted for the most pure liberty-based candidate. But from an outcome standpoint, it doesn't matter if you felt really good about your vote if you're finding yourself against the wall at the gulag being like, well, I voted for the guy that was supposed to be the pro-liberty candidate. That's great. Bring that to the grave. Like that, and obviously that's hyperbole, right? But that's where we're at. That's where we are electorally and politically speaking. We have to be able to objectively look at what was the possible outcome on the other side of the aisle. And the culture, right? The culture that I go back to this, the culture has moved predominantly to the right, and the politics are starting to follow. That's an opportunity for us to change more hearts and minds, because as the culture becomes more and more comfortable with having conversations on the right side of the political aisle, the more chances we have to start changing hearts and minds with a target market that's already open and interested, or at least like willing to have a conversation about the ideas of liberty or small L libertarianism. I can guarantee, Brent, like you and I, we were to go out and talk to 10 Democrats versus 10 Republicans. You might not get all 10 Republicans on board to libertarianism, right? But you might be able to get 6 or 7. Versus if we go talk to our friends on the Democratic left, they might listen to us, but how many think you're actually going to get converted? Like 1? Maybe, if we're lucky, right? And we have to be able to acknowledge that. Like, yes, for every Jimmy Dore that's out there, right, there is how many folks on the political right who are starting to embrace more of a small L libertarian ethic. I mean, dude, I had my father-in-law who basically, like, he was never really a big politico. He's been listening to my show for a few years now, and just unprovoked over the winter break, he's like, Brian, I'm starting to find myself agreeing with libertarians on a lot of stuff. And it wasn't me pushing him. It wasn't me even selling to him. It was just being consistent and specifically being able to meet him where he's at on the issues he actually cares about and just offer a different perspective. And I think we see way too many libertarians spend time trying to argue versus actually sell. And it's the arguing part that we lose. Because yes, it's important to debate. It's important to put your flag in the proverbial mountain and say, this is a value we believe in. But just to then say, well, I'm going to argue with anybody who disagrees with me, what's that accomplishing? Right? Like, we can have the debate, but let's sell to the folks who are like, yeah, we should plant our flag there in the mountain. And that's what's happened in the culture. And 2020 opened up that door for people to start saying, you know what? Maybe I do want to start looking at things in a different way. Maybe I do want to start having different conversations instead of being told I'm not allowed to have that conversation. And if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris had won in 2024, do we think Mark Zuckerberg would all of a sudden be having his libertarian moment and starting to admit that Facebook fucked us royally during the COVID pandemic and censoring different perspectives? I mean, do we think that would happen? Absolutely not. Would we see Jeff Bezos and his wife, his booby-laden lady next to him with Mark Zuckerberg doing the drone stare? Like, would that have happened? Probably not. And yet here we are in 2025, and we can objectively say this is happening. And it's in a positive way, I think. But is it perfect? No. And will we always have something that we need to pay attention to from either side of the political aisle that it could be a threat to liberty? Absolutely. So where we have an obligation is in the winning right now, right? Continue to keep the train on the tracks. We have this end goal, Libertopia. Don't tell the folks, oh my God, Trump's evil because he's doing, these 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 unliberty things. Say, dude, way to go, freeing Ross Ulbricht. Way to go, ending the federal income tax if we can get that route. Like, all these things, celebrate it and say, and here's why those are good. Because from a libertarian ethic, a libertarian perspective, we know that this will lead to a more positive, more freer outcome, which ultimately is a better outcome for all of us. So instead of just saying, no, you're wrong, you're bad, articulate a better vision. Paint a better future. And that's something that has not happened with any real Republican candidates since Reagan. And that's not to say Reagan was a beacon of liberty on a hill, but at least he was willing to give a talking to libertarian ethos and mention the ideas of a limited government. We're not going to hear that from Biden. We're not going to hear that from Kamala Harris. So again, take the wins. We will have things to battle, and we will have to forever stay vigilant, right? Don't just give them a free pass, but acknowledge where we are. And the fact that we're able to have a win on the board right now is only because of what happened in November.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of that. And so one thing I will disagree with a little bit, and maybe not, maybe it's not disagree is a little strong point or strong wording there, but with the Democrats, you're like, oh, maybe you could get, this is one of the things that I've noticed. Human beings seem to be more open to ideas when they're framed. Like Michael Malice is a great quote. It's like, most people don't view things through a true and false filter. They view things through an us and them filter. Right. So I think a lot of people are more open to the ideas we might be selling wrapped in a criticism. So if, let's say, for example, Trump is doing something that's really bad for individual liberty, right? Or really bad from an economic standpoint. I think the people on the left are more open to listening to that when he's in power as opposed to when their guy is in power.
But are they our market?
What's that?
Are they our market?
I think everyone's our market. I
disagree.
Why do you? Oh, this is really fascinating. Why do you disagree?
Oh, because, think about it from a business standpoint, man. When your market's everybody, that means your market's nobody, right? Riches are in the niches. So we have to find our niche and where we win and why. If we're going out and we're trying to create a product, air quote, right, product for everyone, then that means it's a product for no one. It's the whole syndrome from The Incredibles. When everyone's super, no one is, right? That's the same mentality. And if we go out leading with looking at the left as on equal playing field as the folks on the right in terms of an ideal customer persona, or I like to call it an ideal voter persona, right? Then I think we're playing a fool's errand, because the left, even though they might hear us out, right? They might entertain us and be like, okay, let me hear your perspectives there, Brian. They're not going to change their values. AOC's not going to change her values. Ilhan Omar's not going to change her values. Adam Schiff isn't going to change his values. They'll entertain us, and then they'll move on, and that's about it. Whereas on the political right, I would dare say, we have, again, going back to my example, I think we have way more of a shot of getting 7-8 Republicans to start saying, hey, maybe I'm more a small L libertarian than we would the folks on the left. And that just speaks to they are more open to being someone that would consider a change because per the ideal voter persona, they're matching a lot of the areas that we win.
And that totally makes sense to me. And I'm like I said, I'm not a political strategist, dude. You know me, I'm a philosopher. I start from philosophy, and I think
philosophizer.
I do, man. And I think liberty's for everybody. You know, so for me, it's a matter of what's your gateway drug, dude? Because I've seen Ron Paul bring in people equally from the left and right. He courted the anti-war left and brought a ton of people to libertarianism through that message. I think the message of liberty is broad, and it's sort of spread between the left and right, right? I think
is it fair to say though that it's also easy to kind of hit at people's very hot trigger emotional buttons? And think about it, right? Ron Paul came to the main forefront of our political minds right after the Iraq War, right?
Sure.
And that was at that point just shy of a decade of endless war. Versus, like, you look at Bernie Sanders, right? Bernie Sanders in 2016. I mean, he kind of had a big resurgence. Oh, I say resurgence. He just had an emergence. He wasn't even like really on the political radar.
He wasn't relevant.
No, but what is he doing? He was leading with democratic socialism, small d. Like, that was the argument. And that's not pro-liberty, but he got a lot of folks. And by the way, like, let's call a spade a spade. And he had more tangible electoral success than Ron Paul. Ron Paul, granddaddy of all like libertarian thought. Well, not granddaddy of thought, but in terms of actual like getting into office and having success. Ron Paul was a long-term congressman who ran for president twice and never really got past like top 4 on the GOP primary. Bernie Sanders was the final 2 and would have probably destroyed Joe Biden in 2020 were it not for the Democratic machine saying we can't allow that. All y'all still running the primary, you drop out today, you endorse Joe Biden, and then the next day was, I think, Super Tuesday, and all the big states went for Biden, which just it shut the door, it slammed the door on Bernie Sanders. So I hear you, man. Like, yes, liberty's for all, but in terms of like, okay, liberty's for all, then what, right? Like, who's actually going to do something with it? Who's going to make the buying decision to not just say, I'll hear you out, but actually like buy liberty. In this case, vote for a liberty-oriented or libertarian candidate.
Yeah, man, this is where I probably need to readjust my thoughts, frankly, because I've been a no vote person. I don't think that political action, I'm on the record a ton of times saying,
yeah,
like, I don't think political action is the way to liberty. It seems like the antithesis to liberty, but obviously this current election cycle has shown us that you can achieve certain pragmatic ends. I'm not debating that. Like, that's true.
Oh, no,
like I completely, you have to be an idiot to not realize like you can get some wins.
Well, Brent, there are lots of idiots out there in the libertarian movement who are arguing today that we didn't win anything. We've just been used and screwed.
Yeah. I don't want to say like fuck those people, because I'm really trying to build a libertarian coalition. Maybe we should talk about that. Is like, you've seen my video that I posted, and
yes.
and I'm trying really hard, man, to wrangle the autists. Can we as libertarians, people that are even liberty minded, right? I think I called out in that video, it's like even that Being Libertarian page that everyone likes to shit on because they're basically, MAGA Republicans. You could just be like fine, like come on in, like I get that you are at least saying some of the right words, and maybe you have some of the concepts down, and you can always be like, oh, you're not far enough, but like, can we like circle the wagons here and be like you're in, right? We can debate the nuances of the spectrum between libertarian and statist, like where you fit on there and how far you're going to go, and like we can have those are valid debates, right? But it feels like people get so caught up in their team membership. I'm a this type of I'm a anarcho syndo, the 75 flags. It's like the infinite genders, man. And libertarianism is weird.
It's like the genders.
It is, right? And people get so in these fucking tribes, man. It's like, wait a minute, do we give a shit about liberty or not? If we do, we should all be pulling together, going like, okay, we might have differences about where the end is, but we should at least agree on the direction. Right, like there's some things we can agree on. Like, we're trying to go generally this way towards liberty, right? So I don't understand why we have to be so exclusionary and have to be such this club of dipshits that is just content on. It's like a D&D club or something weird, where it's like a social thing, and like nobody expects to get any wins or to make any progress, right? And it's so frustrating to me, because I feel like there's a lot of really smart people that are in the movement, but they're so caught up in fighting with each other, they're not even looking at ways to get wins, and it's endlessly frustrating. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, man. You've been...
Oh, no, I do. I have lots of thoughts, and I'll share them with you. You said something that I don't know if I coined the term, or I been trying to make it more prevalent over on X. This social club libertarianism, though, right? And just Brent, when did you start really getting involved in the movement? Like, when did you start really like digging into this shit?
Mid 90s.
Okay,
94.
so you've seen, right? Like, you've seen the progression of the big L Libertarian Party, and like let's just address the elephant in the room, man. The Libertarian Party, by and large, right? I'm generalizing here for the sake of conversation. It has been a very seriously unserious group of folks who like to be in their own little social club of also socially awkward goofballs. And to your point, right, this DND theater kid mentality of just like, well, I'm the secretary for my Libertarian Party county chapter, and you know I love the Robert's Rules of Order. Like fucking goodness, nobody gives a shit. And like when you look at a lot of these folks, and again, I'm sorry, I'm going to generalize though, they are personally very unserious people. Their lives are traditionally a mess, right? They are probably, you know, and again, libertarians for a long time, what was our main marketing, Brent? Fucking drugs, right? It was like, you want to go smoke some weed? Like, you're like
weed,
Republicans
man.
and Democrats, but we let you smoke weed. And that became like a big calling card for a lot of folks who became libertarians. But then what? Like, okay, you're in your little group, okay, and you do what with your little group? Like, what have you done politically? You nominate Gary fucking Johnson and Bill Weld and Joe Jorgensen, Chase Oliver, like, and I'm not here to shit on them today, but that's not a winning political strategy. That's this social club libertarianism, like, exemplified. And I see this time and again. The people who are the loudest voices right now in the greater libertarian movement are the political goofballs, not even political necessarily all the time, but just like the goofballs in the liberty movement who have been the yesteryear carryovers who, you know, they were the LP treasurer for their home county, or they were, you know, a former candidate for, you know, dog catcher in their county. And that was the one thing they thought that gave them enough credibility to be like, you know, a big messenger in the liberty movement. And like, they're the ones who are saying that Trump's not a win, that getting Ross Ulbricht freed after over a decade being behind bars for what, building a website, like that's not a win. And that actually we got used. What? Fucking take a win. And that right there, right? When I would say that to folks, take a win, they'd be like, well, you're doing all these negative things. He's not a libertarian. And I'm like, I know he's not a libertarian. I don't need him to be a libertarian to do libertarian things. And this is where, like, when we come, you mentioned the labels, man, like, that is where we just mess up so badly. We get into we argue. I'll reframe my thoughts. I'm so fucking heated in this. We argue the ideas of individuality, right? And like, then you look at these autists in the movement who they are the most tribal people you will ever meet. I can't support him. He doesn't have a big L next to his name. It's like, okay, just fucking say vote blue no matter who then. Like, vote gold no matter old. That's probably like a pedophile, like minor attracted persons calling card. But like, that right there, that is the mentality that has permeated the greater libertarian movement now for the past 40, 50 years. And I'm sorry, like, I would take 10 Thomas Masseys, Ron Pauls, Rand Pauls, and fuck it, Justin Amash, and let's toss Mike Lee in there just for shits and gigs, right? I would take 10 of those individual guys, 10 of each, relative to getting one big L libertarian member elected to U.S. Congress. Why? Because number one, the folks I mentioned earlier, they are serious people who can actually enact serious change, politically speaking, but also policy-wise. And we're seeing that right now. Like, who is one of the loudest members in Congress and definitely the biggest thorn in both political party sides? Thomas Massey. And I was just listening to him over on Timcast when he said, he goes, I get people who call me, I'm bipartisan. He goes, but I don't like either side 100%. So I'm transpartisan. And he was like, that might raise some eyebrows for sure, hearing I'm transpartisan. By the way, aside, I just love that we're right now watching like the Thomas Massey, like glow up era where he's like, no more glasses, like the glasses are off. Massey is serious. Which I love to see, by the way. But yeah, man, that is right there. That is the ultimate thing. is that we have far too many goofballs in our movement who they have had these positions of in their mind, positions of power, which they were just a name to say that you're, I'm the VP of my county club. Like, okay, that means nothing. Sorry, like Archie Flower, who debated Dave Smith. That's not. I don't care that you were the VP for whatever your county in Vermont. And what does that mean? I don't care. That doesn't. That what is what show is it? Has no power here, right? Like you have no power.
You have no
here,
power
right?
here, yeah.
Like that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. And you're a goofball if you think it does. And I've gone to the conventions, man. I've sat down with the goofballs. I've had debates with the goofballs. They're goofballs. And listen, like this is a very real heart to heart with libertarians, is that if you present your goofballs as the standard bearers for your party and your average person interacts with said goofball, what do you think the takeaway from the public at large is going to be? It's going to be, oh, y'all are a bunch of goofballs. Like Gary Johnson, I'm not trying to shit on him. I think he's a great human being at his core. But when he's on stage and he's like, well, what is Aleppo? I think Trump's a pussy. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is who you are. When Jo Jorgensen, who I had in my show twice, mind you, and she's like going to every fucking rally and giving a speech as though she's a college professor from 1996, because that's what she is. Like, what? Who is motivated by this? And we finish it off with Chase, right? Like when you have Chase, who got less than, what, 0.5%? I think he got 600,000 votes total. For context, by the way, folks, Donald Trump got 77 million plus votes. Like,
yeah. Chase, sorry to interrupt, but Chase got beat by somebody who wasn't even running.
Yup.
RFK beat him and he wasn't even running.
Yes. And that right there, that speaks to when you consistently run unserious people for very serious positions, the public by and large, whether they are open and empathetic to your ideas or not, they're going to see that, and they're going to take you as unserious folks. Like, you see the folks in the left, they don't think we're a serious group of folks. And the folks on the right, the only reason that we're a serious force on the right now is because a lot of our bigger speakers who are going out there, like the Dave Smiths of the world and the Michael Malices of the world, like they're going on to platforms and engaging in dialogue with people to do what? Fucking change their minds. Like, and that right there, man, that is the difference. Because we've had this mentality of, well, you can't be in my club because you're not a libertarian. Versus going out and selling this fucking idea and trying to get more people interested. So like when I see Dave Smith on Theo Vaughn's podcast, right? Or he's going out and talking to folks like Andrew Schultz, like he's selling liberty. That's objectively a good thing. Who the fuck are you to sit there and be like, well, he's doing it the wrong way because he's talking to people who aren't libertarian? No shit. That's the point. Yes. Fuck.
Yeah, dude, I totally feeling your frustration, man, because I'm in the same boat. And
I've been doing this since 2018. Like the whole sell liberty thing, that's been my whole shtick. And like the people who are like, well, what is that? I'm like, just go fucking watch an episode from 2019. Like, come on, guys.
Well, to get to that sort of ethos of selling it, because I mean, I hate the words convert, right? It's got this like religious, bent to it, right? Like seriously, I'm not trying to convert anybody. Like I think I've got better arguments, right? That's where I'm at. Better reason, better arguments, and I think that adopting the principles of human liberties is good for you. That's my pitch to people, and I believe it. Like I do. Like you're not going to convince me. I think liberty is for everybody. Strategy wise, cool. Like I get your point. Like we can be more targeted.
And by the way, I agree. Liberty is for everybody. Just so we're on the same page.
Yeah, and so I will talk to anybody about anything at any like I've had communists on my show, man. Like I'll talk to anybody, right? I think that there's an inroad somewhere, and we can have these conversations. My question to you though is, how do you have a real conversation with people, and like a conversation with people on the right, let's say, who are Trump voters, and they're really energized in this moment, and you see what's happening. I've like if we like an old dude like me, been around the block, I know what's going on, and I'm seeing the things that are being teed up. And how do you raise them in a way that it's going to be accepted. I'm not sure if there's even an answer to this, right? Because my
Oh,
problem with the MAGA movement is that it appears to be, not all, obviously it's a generalization, but there is a big aspect of, or a big, cohort of that population. You're in a cult, man. Like, you are seriously in a cult, and it feels like there's no sort of ability to talk to them, because anything that the man does, they will find a way. You've seen it, right?
yep.
You talk about things like this campaign cycle. He was 100% pro-vax. The dude is boosted to the gills, and he thinks his Operation Warp Speed was the greatest thing he's ever done.
Yep. Yep.
And then you get this very weird thing, man. It's like, well, man, he's playing 5D chess. You don't understand. But at the same time, it's like Schrodinger's genius. He's playing 5D chess while at the same time being fooled by low-level staffers all the time. And so, and I get really frustrated, because it's like, I'm trying to talk sense to people, and I'm not trying to be a dick. I really try to not be an asshole online. I want to be like, hey, have you thought about this? And like, I don't see, many openings there. It feels like you're either on the team or you're a pariah. And that's a difficult bridge to gap. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on how to, quote unquote, sell to that sort of person.
Well, and you're not going to like this answer, and I'm sorry. But like, again, it goes back to knowing who the ideal market is. I don't view the MAGA base as necessarily an ideal market, just as I wouldn't view the Democratic Socialists of America as an ideal target market, right? Like, this election was revenge of the normies, Brent. And that is our target market. It is your average, normal, common sense, everyday person fucking from 1995, right? Like, if you were to take your average person from 1995 and you put them in 2025, they are a radical right-wing extremist. And that is the gosh darn truth. And that is the person who I look at and I say, no. You're not a right-wing extremist. You're a normal person from 1995. What happened was the political left went fucking bananas. Now, to every action is an opposite reaction, right? And that is what we see with the MAGA base. MAGA base is a reaction to the goofball insanity that happened from the left. I don't view either of those sides, though, as the target market that we should be trying to sell to. So what I do say is, let's look at those normal folks, the Theo Vons of the world, right? I'm gonna just generalize him. Theo Von, the comedian circuit, the bro circuit, right? Your Make America Healthy folks. Like, go talk to the people who are like, listen, I'm not an ism. I'm a dude. I'm Bill. I live in Montana, right? Or like I'm Nicole Shanahan, and I live out in California, and I just want to fucking live a life that's a normal, good life. I don't want to poison my kids. I don't want to tax them into poverty. I just want to spend have our country spend into poverty. I want to make sure we're relatively protected at home and safe while not stepping on people's freedoms. Like, help me. I'm a normal person. The MAGA base doesn't speak to them, and the goofballs in the left, the extremists there, they don't speak to them either. So first, again, it's understanding who to talk to. And I'm not saying don't talk to the folks from the MAGA movement or the Democratic Socialists or the communists you've had in your show. I'm not saying that. Talk to them, but go in with an expectation set that I'm probably not going to change these people's minds. I'm not going to sell them on anything. But, right, when you do talk to the normie, and you do talk to that common sense person, it goes back to understanding sales. And again, I'm not trying to just like promote my show, briannicholsshow.com. But like, sales is a dirty word in a lot of people's minds because they have this preconceived notion of like the used car sales guy slapping the top of the car and the lemon. He's like, this is the best car you can get, right? Like that's not sales. That's sleaziness. What sales is at its core is helping someone who is at a decision point make a decision based on some type of problem they have identified and a solution that you have brought to the table to help solve said problem, right? That is at its core what sales is. So understanding the average normie from 1995, who is a normie today, but again would be labeled a radical right-wing extremist, labeled. I'm not sure what that word would be. But like, take that person, right? And talk to them, understand what are your pain points? What are your reasonings right now to be exploring alternatives, right? We call this in sales. Let me see if I have my book here. We call this in sales a trigger event. This is a great book from Craig Elias. I had him on the show. He's a great dude. And actually, he helped me coach my sales team back a couple years ago when I was out in Philly. Regardless, trigger events are moments when a customer is in a buying opportunity, right? Meaning something's happened. They have either maybe they moved jobs, shit hit the fan at the company, right? Or the thing broke. Like I see this a lot where here we'll get nerd talk, right, dude? I'll have people who have their pre-built IVRs, which is an intelligent voice response for folks playing along in the home game. When you call into your favorite company, it's like press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish. Welcome to ABC Credit Union. That thing, those were built on legacy prem-based solutions. And some of these older contact center providers have been out there. They said, end of life, we're no longer supporting these after 2024. You're on your own, right? So you had this pre-built IVR, VXML is the solution, by the way, and this VXML is out there, and all of a sudden it goes dead, and you walk into your office one day and there's no IVR. What the fuck do I do? Right? I'm fucked, right? Like this is the way my company greets customers and takes payments. It's gone. And there's no way to get it fixed because the company's like, we're not supporting it anymore. So we can take that pain point, right? Like that fear. And what are the main motivating factors, Brent? Fear or love, right? So we take that fear, we say, hey, no worries. We can basically give you an insurance policy. We can copy and paste your existing solution and move it to the cloud. So you have it running on-prem and in the cloud simultaneously. And God forbid, you walk in tomorrow and the on-prem's dead. Guess what? It's still running. It's still in the cloud now. And now you have an easy pathway to move your phone system from the on-prem to the cloud, right? So that is a very real pain point, to go back to the politics world, right? A pain point that we can start to have a conversation around. We don't lead, though, with the ism. You don't lead with, like, look at what we can do. We're the best. Like, you don't do that. You lead by identifying the problems that people would even want to, like, discuss with you based on the fact you can solve them. So going back to those normies, what is it? Is it the budget, like your own budget at home, like being able to pay groceries and like, put gas in the car, pay for your kids' education? Like, is it a pain point there? Is it health, right? Is it something with insurance? Is it something with just the health of your American family? Like the poison we're putting in our bodies, and that's okayed, by the way, from the government. The one institution that says we're going to determine what is and is not safe is saying that the things that aren't safe are safe, right? What? I don't trust them anymore, right? I've lost trust. That's a pain point. So identifying those pain points and then being able to build a air quote, I'm using the word sales very loosely here, folks, but build a sales process around that. Okay, let's understand that pain point. How do you think we got here, right? Help them understand, like, as you're talking through it, like, this just didn't happen. You didn't walk in one day, Bill, in the IT department, and all of a sudden your IVR was dead. What happened? Did you know this was going to go end of life? Did you start to look at things? No. Why? And just understanding who your buyer is, why they have this pain. And then this is the most important part, right? Offer them a tangible solution. And this is where libertarians have fucking dropped the ball, Brent, because we lead with, hey, here's all these problems. You're right. Government sucks. Fucking Federal Reserve. Like, it's terrible. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. These guys get it. They fucking get it. So what do? We run Chase Oliver for president and get 0.5%.
Is that fair though, man? Because like
100%.
you just called out. So here's a great example of where I think that libertarians actually do bring a solution.
Can I just finish my thought really quick?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Because this right here, right? The solution needs to be tangible. And I didn't mean to pick on Chase in particular, but it's when libertarians run as like these, like, I'm a savior candidate, but there's no fucking way they're going to win. Your average person's not going to look at it as a credible solution. It might actually solve their problems, right? Like, I've talked to companies, they have the best fucking product in the world, but they have no real tangible way of selling it to a customer that needs it. Like, maybe it's an SMB customer and they're an enterprise solution, right? It doesn't translate. And they view us as not a serious solution. So what do? They turn off, right? They do not move forward. They've gone through the discovery call. They've gone through the demo. And they're like, this isn't going to work. I need a solution that I know I can actually implement and I can turn on tomorrow, right? And that, at the very least, Brent, that is what Trump offers them, is a solution that is tangible. They can see him in office signing these executive orders. And guess what? They know for a fact that Chase Oliver wasn't going to be in the executive office signing executive orders, right? And if the alternative was Kamala Harris, they're probably terrified of what that could turn into. if she was the one signing those EOs. So they vote for Trump both as a solution to their problem, but also as insurance against the worst case scenarios. So that was my final thought there to wrap up that whole kind of narrative. But I'm not picking on Chase, just to pick on Chase. I'm picking on Chase as he was our standard bearer as a libertarian movement in 2024. So we gotta use him as the example he is. Use Joe Jorgensen, use Gary Johnson. I don't care. Like, that is the reality that people see when they see the Libertarian Party present candidates that are unfortunately not serious, realistic solutions.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not arguing with you. I don't think the Libertarian Party has ever put forward a sort of serious candidate other than Ron Paul once. But my point is like I don't agree that we don't put forward solutions, right? I think, for example, a very simple solution that we put forward very loudly and over a very long period of time, which is end the fucking Federal Reserve. It's a very simple, very practical solution. It doesn't require a persona. You don't need a strongman person to go ram that thing through. Like, it is a very simple idea.
How do we do it though? And that's
my point. That's my point. Yeah. So the idea is like, okay, well, this is a really simple solution to solving the problem. You just need to end the Fed. We can't even get like an audit the Fed bill passed, right? When somebody wants to put it for, like, well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think it's very easy to sell fear around any sort of big change in the financial system. Mm-hmm. People don't want it because they're like, oh, this thing I've got right now, this inflation thing that we know has been destroying everyone for a very long time. It is, aside from post-pandemic, it is generally one of those things that sort of frog in the water, sort of.
It's managed. It's a managed 2% increase in inflation, Brent. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, what I'm saying is, like, it's not, it's one of those things that I think politicians know that they can sweep it under the rug exactly until the point that they can't. There's a wall that you hit that is basically catastrophic disaster, and everything before that becomes sort of manageable.
But right? That's my point, though. That's my point, is that, like, yes, it's not the solution, right? And again, I want to make that crystal clear. You're right. The solutions end the Fed. But the key word I used is a tangible solution. And that's the part I think we're missing, is that your average person hears end the Fed, and there is no A plus B equals C in their mind to show that there is a pathway from saying end the Fed to ending the Fed. And that's where I think we're dropping the ball. Not so much from a solution standpoint, because you're right, we had the right solution. We're not selling it. And we're we turn into the guy with the blowhorn on the side of the corner of the street yelling end the Fed. And what happens is most people walk by and go, what the fuck is that guy saying? Why does that matter? Right? And they don't put it together. That's why we have to start understanding where to sell better. And that is, like, talk to my father-in-law, right? And do it unintentionally, where I'm like, yeah, man, I'm looking at Bitcoin. And he's like, why? I'm like, well, because I don't trust the financial system. That's why. He's like, why though? And I'm like, because the Federal Reserve fucks with the interest rates. You know that, right, Dad? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, well, that's not a good thing. And here's why. And just talk and have a real legitimate conversation. That right there, like, that is the difference, because now he can go to his favorite, politician or whatever that's actually they're in office or whatnot, and he can start asking them questions, because now he's empowered, he's educated, he's enlightened, he's informed. And that right, it's over my shoulder. And like, that is the whole idea, is like, you need to get the normie to start asking these questions of the people who actually can do stuff. Because the problem is, Brent, we as libertarians will say it, and then they say, okay, now what? Now what? We're just going to talk about it, right? That's all we're going to do. We're going to go on a podcast every other fucking week and say, end the Fed, and do nothing. And we can talk about it all day long, but until we start actually selling it in a way that your average person can now walk away with a battle plan, like, okay, here's my fitness routine to end the Fed, right? Like, here you go. That's what we need to start doing better at.
Yeah, and so help me, because I struggle with this sort of inertia, and maybe it's apathy with the general public.
Oh, tons of apathy.
And this is, sure. I think, this is why I think libertarians are so great on actual issues, like, Federal Reserve, monetary policy, is because we're fucking nerds, man. And I think the regular person, like you're talking about,
you mean autistic.
A little bit of that too. So And hey, man, weaponized autism is a powerful thing, man. I work with people in tech all day long that are just
Oh, yeah.
superstars, right? So it's very powerful. But I'm talking about the average normie, right? Like
Yep.
you want to start talking about something that's very complicated, like interest rates and monetary policy. What's M1? What's M2? Why does money supply matter? What does the Treasury do? How does the Fed buy bonds out of things? Like it's very complicated.
Oh yeah.
Right? People don't want to hear this shit, and
Nope.
so I struggle with like the mechanics of selling this. Like, cool, give me a solution. Like, if the Fed is a solution, and you have to have something tangible, like you said, to sort of package this. Like, this is our path forward. Like, what are we missing?
Stories, storytelling, and an understanding of messaging.
Is that what it is? Just telling a story?
Yes. Like you think about any of the movies that we grew up with, Brent, right? Like Lion King, Cinderella. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like the 90s Toy Story. I don't know. Like go through all the like the 90s and 80s and 70s movies, Star Wars, right? What else? Star Trek. You can go through the Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like that's my favorite. We learn through stories. And we used to, as a tribe back in the day, you communicated through stories, right? You didn't just go and say like, big bush near tree bad. Like you didn't just say that. You would say walking to a tree, notice bush, big bear, jump out, attack, kill, danger. Like you tell the story. And we've, as a society, turned storytelling into ways not just to communicate, but to understand. Like how many times? Actually, here's a great example. Right back in the 80s, when Ronald Reagan's trying to put forth his whole like space initiative. Right, what do you call it?
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Why? To
was the pop
fucking make
culture.
sense.
Yeah,
And it connects, right? It goes to the noggin. And I had on my show, what's his name? Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, his name does matter. He wrote this book though, called Brain Glue, and how ideas are sticky, right? And what was his name? I'm so sorry to the author. He's a great dude. He's like this jolly little elf, but he's like, he used to work with Warren Buffett and stuff, like helping identify how to make ideas and make these very hard to understand things easy to understand. And that right there, like we get so, I'm sorry to go back to sales, Brent, but like we get so stuck in the features and benefits, right? And the tech, right? Like, because we do have weaponized autism 100%. And we like to, like, I brought out a book and I hate that I did that. But because we like to read this shit, right? Like I like to understand how this stuff works. Your average person doesn't. Your average person, they are overwhelmed. They are exhausted. They are very, very, they have high cortisol levels because they're anxious. They're fear. It's fight or flight. And they're like, dude, I don't fucking care. I don't care how it works. Give me the spark notes, right? Just help me understand this really quick. And that's where we drop the ball a lot because we get excited. I want to tell you about trigger events and how how it all works and shit, right? But when it comes down to it, the better way I could have probably articulated that was to say, hey, when you ever change a job, and if you're in like a buying role and you change a job, you ever notice how all of a sudden you go to a different company and you get hit with like fucking 30 cold emails of like, hey man, I see you recently changed roles. How exciting. Why? That's a trigger event. For that seller, they see you changing roles as an opportunity to engage in a new conversation, right? So I could easily have articulated that in a more easy to understand way by telling a story, because that's something we've all experienced. And it goes down to, it's hard to take something like the Fed that is so fucking out there and arbitrary, right? And not easy to grasp around, because I don't see it every day. I don't walk down the street and see the Fed, right? Unless you're in one of the big cities. But like you don't get to see the sausage being made. It's not a part of our daily lives. Like you're not going to the Fed like you go to the grocery store every day, right? So it's much more difficult of a sell because it's something inherently that's not familiar. So in that, we have to use metaphors, right? You have to use analogies. You have to use examples. We have to make it so we can refer to the Fed to something that your average person would understand. Now, I'm not trying to pat myself on the proverbial back here, but I did an episode actually kind of just around this, and I called it Island Economics. And I used the example of like this big boat coming to this island, and where seashells are the currency, right? And all of a sudden, all these tourists are like, fucking seashells, and they just go bananas for seashells, right? And they just start collecting all these seashells. Well, what happened? All of a sudden, all these seashells are gone. And the value of that seashell, I'm going to have a tongue twister here, that seashell starts to go up. Why? Because there's less of them, right? Scarcity. And well, what happens though if all of a sudden there is this big pirate ship that goes by, and they just are like, we're going to drop all of our seashells here, and they drop 3 million seashells all of a sudden onto the island. Well, that what happens. They're not worth anything anymore, right? Because now they're everywhere. And that is so much easier to understand than M1, M2 economics or monetary policy. I don't know what the fuck you said, right? Like that's how your average person's brain is though. They're like, fucking what? I know interest rates go up, down, but I can't relate that to anything. Can everybody relate to an island economic thing? Maybe not, but it makes it so it's not this untangible boogeyman that I can't articulate because I don't know what it is. To at least I can see an island in my head, and I can see seashells on the beach, and I can get the idea of that being currency, right? That is the difference, I think, Brent. I hope that actually helped, because I know I went on a little bit of a rant there, but as I was walking through it, it actually kind of made sense.
No, it totally does. The thing that I kept thinking about, though, and it totally tracked for me, but I'm thinking about the other side's story, because they tell a story too. And their story seems to be a lot simpler. It's not true, but it's simpler.
Yep.
And it also pokes at human emotion. So their story, their counter story is, no, it's corporate greed. It's these asshole CEOs that are ripping you off, man. That's the story. We need more government to rein in these CEOs, right? So, and that's a super simple story. It didn't even your seashell thing. It took 5 minutes.
Yep.
Right.
You're spot on. Yep.
Theirs takes 9 seconds. And it lands.
If you were to go that route, say, yeah, you're right. It is controlled by these fucking assholes, and we got to get rid of government because that's how it happens, right? If there's no government to have the relationship with, then there's no more greedy assholes using government to fuck us. Just take it a step further. Take their argument and refine it and make it better.
Boy, I do, but then my roads, it's instantly my roads.
Well, and then right there, man, then they're not your market, right? Because your average person, and that's the problem, man. If you're just getting hit with these people who are just being contrarian to be contrarian, they're not your market. Don't try to sell ice to the Eskimo, right? They don't need it because they don't need to buy it. In this case, you don't need to try to convince somebody that they're wrong when they're just dead set in their ways. You might plant a seed, right? You might plant a seed where they can give you the well, my roads answer, but deep down, you fucked them a little bit. They know, well, fuck you, I'm gonna hit you with my roads argument. But you planted that seed of doubt, right? And even though they can argue all day long, that's not real, blah, 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 it still hits them. It still hits them in their core, and they know it exists. So, yeah, man, I get it. It goes back to knowing your market, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think people need to be okay with planting a lot of seeds and not worrying about it. That's why I always like to talk to people that I'm having discussions about. It's hey, let's not try to change each other's minds. Let's try to understand each other. Let's agree. We're both searching for what's true in the world and what's good in the world. And let's have a dialogue, and it's okay that we don't agree. And then maybe you land a couple of points that they sit and simmer on, and then some other people might, it mixes around, and eventually it might turn into something. I think a lot of people get so caught up in trying to change everyone's mind immediately, and boy, that's not going to work. It's probably going to cause you to go sideways, have psychological reactance, and they're going to oppose you. You're actually going to do something counterproductive. So, hey man, we're getting close to time, but I wanted to thank you so much, because I'm trying to be self-critical, look at myself and being in what ways can I become more sophisticated? Because I do believe, I'm not out on a journey to convert people. Like I said, it's not a religious thing for me, but I do think we have some good ideas, and I do have a little angst that they're not more popular. And I think we have a good opportunity in front of us, because people are talking about these ideas in the public sphere for the first time in a very long time. So thanks for coming by, dude. You're my go-to dude for sales type of stuff. And so why don't you tell everyone where they can find you, even though you've already plugged your show?
The Brian Nichols Show. I've been doing this show since 2018, and the whole idea is to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. In 2019, we took a hard turn towards helping folks understand the ideas of how to sell liberty. So yes, I went into the weeds a little bit today on the show for sales processes. Don't worry, I go even more into the weeds over on the Brian Nichols Show. And with that 935 plus episodes at this point, and from just an understanding of what we actually offer for shows, it's not just sales. So don't worry, folks. We usually do a couple different iterations. We'll do some type of monologue where I'll either go over the topics of the week, or I'll do some sales conversation or something like that, or tell a story to help people paint the picture of island economics. Two, I'll have an interview where I'll interview some person from business or from the world of science, or a politician, or whatever, and I'll talk about whatever issues that they are really championing and leading with, because a lot of these folks are promoting very important issues and folks just don't know they exist. So trying to help promote that. And then I do an AMP America week in review, where my buddy Remzo Martinez and I sit down and we'll go through the week's news in a nice, fun, libertarian leaning perspective. Remzo's definitely more I'd say MAGA than I am. I've only recently started to embrace some of the more Republican history of my past. So yeah, I look at what we've been doing at the Brian Nichols Show. It's a very healthy dose of both libertarian common sense politics, but also applying it to the news. You can find me on social media at @BNicholsLiberty. I'm on X, I'm on Facebook, and you can find the Brian Nichols Show on your favorite podcasting platforms and video platforms. We have around 11,000 subscribers over on YouTube and growing, surprisingly, even though they still have me demonetized. Fuck you, YouTube. And then Rumble, you can find me over on Rumble, videos over on X and Facebook as well. Brent, it's always a great time talking to you on the Aiming Up podcast. And folks, go subscribe to Brent's podcast, because not too many shows out there are doing this type of service where you're having conversations, yes, about the issues that matter, but from all perspectives, man. And I love that you're just open to hearing different ideas of doing things, different ways of actually getting the goals we're trying to set out and accomplishing them. So yeah, just keep it up, man. You're doing all the right things.
Appreciate it, dude. Yeah, you're one of the good guys, man. So I encourage everyone to go check out Brian's show, dude. I love it. It's awesome. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks, buddy. I'll see you around.